In this session, you will understand the meaning and scope of economic geography, concepts related to economic geography, what is the significance of economic geography. Economic geography is a sub-discipline that uses a geographical approach to study the economy. It is a vibrant and exciting branch of geography. Its name would suggest that economic geography lies somewhere between or at overlap of disciplines of geography and economics. This is true to some extent. In fact, both geographers and economists use the term economic geography. However, they mean different things by it. Indeed, it is important to stress from the outset that approach that geographers are using to study the economy is very different from that used by most economists. More generally, the distinction between economic geography and geographical economies reflects fundamental differences between the way the economy is treated by geographers on one hand and economists on the other. Economic geography is the study of man and his economic actions in a variety of different conditions. Geographers hold divergent views on the subject's definition. Indeed, while many authors have defined economic geography differently, they all agree on one definition. It is the study of geographical distribution of man's economic activity in relation to his environment, whether physical or non-physical. Economic geography, according to Dudley's stamp, involves a study of the geographical and other variables that affects man's productivity, but only to a limited extent, insofar as they are related to production and commerce. According to R.S. Thompson's book, The Geography of Economic Activity, economic geography can be described as investigation of the production, trade and consumption of products by people in various parts of the world. A special focus is made on the location of economic activity, on the question of why economic activities are located in their current location in the world. As per J. McFarlane, economic geography is the study the influence exerted on man's economic activity by his physical environment, more precisely by the form and structure of land surface, the climatic conditions that prevail and the spatial relationship that exists between its various regions. According to Harshon, who is a very famous economic geographer, and also Alexander, economic geography is the study of the geographical variation of activities associated with producing, trading and consuming commodities and services on the Earth's surface. It examines disparities in economic growth among areas or nations. It examines transportation, commercial routes and trades that result from and are influenced by these evolution. Thus, the economic resource problem has gotten more difficult in the modern era, with millions starving and unemployed. These issues are exacerbated in countries and among individuals who place a premium on material rather than spiritual growth. A man born and raised in Western society is a creature comfort believer. He makes every effort to better his competitive lifestyle. The competitive mindset results in socio-economic difficulties. Economic geography then seeks to address these issues by maximizing the efficiencies and effectiveness of limited resources through logical, methodological, scientific and long-term planning. Now, I would like to quote Humboldt, who is also a prominent German geographer from 19th century. He said that the earth's many richness are tremendous source of human delight, and hence man's fullest development necessitates that we integrate these riches into a single word streams of understanding and usages. I will again quote one more geographer here, whose name is H.H.M. Carty, who said that economic geography is concerned with economic problems and their resolutions. As a result, the student of economic geography must be instructed in 4 primary areas. You must understand what are these areas. The first is to recognize and articulate issues. Second is to construct hypotheses that provide potential solutions to those challenges. Third is to determine the theory's appropriateness in offering answer to these difficulties. And the last one is to establish connections between tested hypotheses and other generalization in corpus of theory. Economic geography helps to international knowledge in this way. It undoubtedly broadens our knowledge and vision and allows us to develop a humanistic perspective. It is critical for the liberalization of our educational system, for the future inhabitant of the contemporary world, so that he may fight for real global understanding between various nations with his assistance and influence. As I stated previously, economic geography's major objective is to investigate man's economic accomplishments and in terms of production and consumption in connection to his environment, to assess the relative relevance of this branch of geography. We must examine the study's aim. Economic geography, like other social sciences, is preoccupied with men's economic well-being. Nevertheless, the approach is markedly different. Its objective is to demonstrate the growth potential of a region occupied by a certain group of people via many levels of interpretations and analysis. Disparities in economic well-being and level of output are common. It is important to mobilize resources to eliminate these inequalities. Prior to starting any endeavor to mobilize resources to address issues, it is necessary to undertake a comprehensive study of the situation. Economic geography meets these criteria. In the United States of America, the Damodar Valley Corporation was modeled after the Tennessee Valley Authority. The Damodar Valley Corporation, on the other hand, did not maximize proportionate benefit to the level that TVA did. When the Damodar Valley Multi-Purpose River Valley project was implemented, only physical characteristics were compared, omitting cultural variables such as technical level, industrialization, and money ability. Thus, the Damodar Valley Corporation did not profit to the same amount as the TVA owing to a lack of a suitable cultural environment. Due to their latitude, areas of Canada have climate that are almost comparable to those of the CIS. Additionally, the technological level of growth is discernible. Under similar conditions, the introduction of a more cold-resistant wheat variety produced in either of these nations may likewise be successful. On the other hand, the early British colonial settlers in Ceylon, now it is in Sri Lanka, committed by a fatal blunder by attempting to cultivate oat, barley, and wheat, despite the fact that the climate and pedogenic circumstances were unsuited for such crops. It is not scientifically reasonable to fundamentally modify an existing cultural pattern in favor of another. Culture, as you may be knowing, that culture emerged as a result of men's dynamic relationship with nature. Regardless of their outward similarity, a country's culture may be incompatible with another's. The phase of man's historical growth or heritage have a significant impact on how his present destiny is determined. Additionally, it is essential to recognize that heredity, whether natural, cultural, or human, should not be overlooked, since forced evaluation or cultural imposition can have disastrous effect. Economic geography approaches such topics from a fairly modest and comprehensive perspective. It is a term that refers to natural, human, and cultural surroundings of a nation or area in relation to man's economic way of life. Let me give you one example. The Japanese agricultural technique was developed as a result of a unique set of geo-economic conditions. Prior to establishing such a profitable agricultural system in India, it is critical to do a complete assessment of the country's agrarian infrastructure. Otherwise, just adopting such a system may not provide positive results. Economic geography, as I mentioned, is focused with determining the influence of the environmental on man via preservation of different geo-economic conditions present around the world. Without a full understanding of the man-environment interaction, every attempt to achieve balanced economic growth will be fruitless. Economic partnerships that lack this knowledge are bound to fail. It is finalized. Thus, economic geography is a crucial tool for reducing and finally eradicating inequalities, disparities across globe nations via scientific study of their economic resources, modern needs and cultural legacies. An economic geographical approach puts spatial concepts such as a space, place and scale as the center of the analysis. These concepts form part of the common language that is shared among professional geographers. It is therefore essential that you familiarize yourself with these concepts right at the start. So, let me explain you what is a space. The concept of a space refers to physical distance and areas. The concept of a space allows us to ask simple questions such as where a particular process is happening. Four interrelated elements of the concept of a space can be identified. The first is territorial and form, for example, territorial form of a particular country. The second is location, example, a location of a particular country. The third is flows across spaces, example, trade flows between countries. And the fourth one is the concept of uneven space as a necessary condition of a capitalist system. Now, let me explain you place. The concept of place aims to capture the specificity or uniqueness of a particular place that are carved out of a space. Through the notion of place, geographers are able to explore the richness and complexity of particular places and economic processes which are always embedded in environment, social, cultural, institutional and political context. Many Western values, for instance, may be aligned to many other cultural societies or nations. Therefore, the way economies are constructed and performed may be very different in different places. For example, in London or in USA. So, that is why it is very important to understand the third concept, that is a scale. The concept of a scale therefore helps us to organize places through a typology of spatial scales. Spatial scales that are commonly used by economic geographers include: the first is global scale, the second is macro regional scale, for example, Southeast Asia or Europe or North America, and the third is national scale, for example, USA, UK, France, Japan, etc. And the fourth is regional scale, for example, California or southeast of England. Next is local scale, for example, Silicon Valley or the city of London. Apart from that, another categorization is lived places, for example, workplace, home place. So, these are different categorization on the basis of scale. It is worth mentioning that exact typology can be tricky at times. For example, the phrases local and regional are frequently used imprecisely. In certain instances, example Hong Kong, Singapore or other cities, determining whether we are dealing with a national, regional or local scale is a challenge. Additionally, it is critical to recognize that three fundamental ideas which are discussed are not only neutral instruments for explaining the world, they may also be viewed as representations of reality. Indeed, the way academics, the media and politicians utilizes these terms has an effect on how we view the world and the issues. While the majority of geographers will recognize and apply the notions of a space, place and a scale mentioned to you, it is critical to understand that these concepts are themselves susceptible to dispute and different interpretations in geography. For example, some geographers use the term space to refer to absolute geographical space, while others use it refer to relative or relational space. Keep this in your mind while you read various geography materials. More broadly, you should be aware that economic geography is a vibrant, dynamic and ever-changing topic comprised of a varied range of techniques and concepts. So let me explain you these concepts. The first one is new classical location theory. Location theory flourished in 1950s and 1960s and was primarily interested in establishing and explaining pattern in distribution of economic activities across space. This type of economic geography was firmly anchored in a neoclassical economic theory and used a model-based approach to study the location of economic geography activity, for example, firms in space. This period in the development of economic geography is often called a quantitative revolution, which provided a foundation for regional science, geographical economics and spatial economics. However, many economic geographers became dissatisfied with the approach and started exploring alternatives. More recently, the interest in regional science and geographical economics has been revived through the work of economists. You might have heard name of Paul Krugman and his new economic geography. Now, second one is that is known as behavioral approach. A behavioral approach emerged in the late 1960s as one of the reaction to the quantitative revolution. It moved away from a simple neoclassical assumption of homo economicus and explored a wider range of factors that influence economic decision making of human actors in various situations. The problem with this approach, however, is that it fails to explore fully the relationship between individual and the society. This approach is also known as a structuralist approach. So, by contrast, a Marxist political economy approach places social relations at the center of its analysis with an emphasis on class. Since the 1970s, Marxist views started to influence geography and still have a significant influence on economic geography today. Importantly, Marxist-inspired economic geography moved the attention from a spatial pattern and locational issue to question of social relations and economic structure of capitalist economies. The post-structuralist approach is also known as new economic geography. However, since the mid-1990s, a new type of economic geography has started to emerge from post-structuralist ideas. An important contribution of the new economic geography is its insistence that economic processes cannot be seen in isolation from social, cultural and political context. In fact, new economic geography argues that social, cultural and or institutional factors are critical to functioning of the economies or the economy. Thus, the emphasis on the notion of class has been replaced by the interest in categories such as gender, race, age, religion and culture. This change of emphasis is often referred to as the cultural turn. Please note that this emphasis on cultural factor also represents one of the key differences between the new economic geography used by geographer and the one used by economists. So, on the basis of this, they argued that economic geographers are interested in three interconnected questions. The first is, in what ways are economic activities organized spatially on the Earth's surface, and how do such spatial forms or pattern change over time? The second question is, why are economic activities organized spatially in particular ways? That is, what are the underlying processes at work? And the third is, How does the spatial organization of economic activities itself influence economic and other social processes? That economic geography is a geography of people's struggle to make a living and should therefore concern itself with the sustainable and human production, use and reproduction of the social, natural and material conditions of human existence. An inclusive economic geography should include the study of the cultural and the environmental origins of economic activities articulated through socially constructed gender and kinship relations and the struggle to establish in a particular set of social relations of production and their geographical extent. There are different things which he tried to emphasize, and other geographers also gave importance to that, like the conceptualization of nature, the form of calculations and the measurement of values, the processes and form of production and consumption generated by such relations and value systems. Apart from that, the division of labor, the condition of development within a particular set of social relationship, the forms of a state and politics which support and legitimize particular social relations and processes of a production and consumption. Apart from that, the construction of cultural and ideological forms which shape the basis of discourses within a particular value system. The structuring of relationship within and between different set of social relations. The condition of transformation from one set of social relation of production to another. This is a long list indeed. It reflects the view discussed earlier that there are no economies, only economic geographies. Put differently, given that all economic processes are inherently spatial, economic geographers should be concerned about all the processes related to the people's struggle to make a living. However, an important question arises about whether such an approach is still needed in the era of globalization, in which space is apparently being dissolved by modern information and communication technology. In this session, economic geography was presented as a vibrant, varied and contentious subfield of geography that employs a spatial method to analyze the economy. The session emphasized the need of using an economic geographic approach to understanding economies in comparison to the conventional economics. To emphasize these distinctions, this session established the fundamental ideas of economic geographical approach, namely space, location and scale. Economic geography, with these the other ideas at its disposal, is ideally positioned to assist us in appreciating and comprehending the modern economic world in all its complexities.